You are listening to the Happiest Lives Podcast with Jill Lillard, episode 120.
Welcome to the Happiest Lives Podcast, where you'll learn to think better, feel better, and become the woman God says you already are. Here's your host, Jill Lillard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Happiest Lives Podcast. We are continuing our series on hormones, happiness, and the Holy Spirit. And we've been exploring how our bodies, emotions, and spiritual lives are beautifully connected together. And so today's episode is about something that I think a lot of women out there wrestle with. You may be one of those women, and it is mood and menopause. We all know when there are changes going on in our body that may affect us emotionally. And so if you've been feeling off, if you feel more anxious, more irritable, more exhausted, and you're wondering, is this just stress? Am I falling apart? What is wrong with me? For many women, these changes are tied to perimenopause and menopause, and most of us are never really taught what to expect or how to get the help we need. So I just wanted to have a conversation today, and I've invited a friend, a special guest here, Dawn Valentino. She is a registered nurse and a certified health practitioner who works with women to uncover root causes of different problems that they're experiencing within their bodies and the different systems that are running the show of their lives. And she helps them restore well-being. So her work, it's not only grounded in science, it is grounded in faith. She believes God's wisdom and design are central to true healing. That's why I'm having her here. And she helps women care for their bodies as temples of the Holy Spirit. So Dawn, hello. I want to welcome you. And I'd love to start by having you introduce yourself.
Hi, Jill. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited and grateful to be here. So I am a wife, a mother of twin boys. I'm a registered nurse, like you said, and a holistic health practitioner. I also put my faith at the center of my work and my family life. And I have always been interested in holistic health, even before I entered conventional medicine as a nurse. But when I graduated from nursing school in 2005, I was searching for a field to enter into to combine both my holistic and conventional medicine background. But there were not many opportunities for that back then. Then as time went by, I began to learn more about holistic health. My focus began to move away from the conventional medicine approach. I wanted to know more about the root cause of people's health concerns and how to support them. And conventional medicine just wasn't showing that. So that desire really ramped up when my son began to have GI issues during COVID. And I wasn't satisfied with the answers that I was getting from doctors when I brought him in to see them. They were telling me to put him on prescription medications. So I knew there was more and that we would be missing the real issue if we just did that type of Band-Aid. And at that time, my faith was getting stronger as I sought to strengthen my foundations in the Lord with questions about our world that were rising out of COVID. So I started searching for answers and seeking to learn more. And that eventually brought me to the School of Christian Health and Nutrition from listening to the Christian Nutritionist podcast. And that was when I decided to take the certification course and move my desire for health and wellness and helping others into health coaching. I finished school, received my Christian health coaching certification, and started my business, Dawning Christian Health.
When women come to you, what are some of the symptoms that they are experiencing?
Typical symptoms I'm seeing are things like night sweats, insomnia, fatigue, hot flashes, and weight gain. Those are the ones that we are all really familiar with. And then more atypical ones are things like hair loss, muscle and joint pain, depression and anxiety, muscle loss, and brain fog. So those are things that people may not be aware that they're part of menopause and the change that our bodies go through.
And what's the difference between perimenopause and menopause?
In simple terms, so menopause is the natural aging of the ovaries and the loss of sex hormones produced by them. And the medical definition is being without your menstrual period for 12 consecutive months. Menopause is when our menstrual cycle stops. So the average age for menopause is around 52, but it can occur as early as 45 or up to age 55. And then speaking to perimenopause, it is the transitioning phase leading up to menopause. And typically women begin in their mid 40s. However, it can start as early as mid 30s or as late as to early 50s.
Okay. So you may be having some symptoms way before you're actually in menopause. So menopause is when you're no longer having a period, but everything up to that point is perimenopause.
Yes. And speaking to my own experience, I say in my 40s, I went to the doctor because I was having some weight gain and starting to just notice some changes that were not normal for me. So I was working out the same way, but I had this 5 pounds that I just couldn't get rid of. So it's not a lot, but I was just in that place where I wanted to try and get rid of it. And so when I went to her, she put me on birth control. I wasn't in all this yet. So not knowing what else to do about it at that point, I took the birth control pills. But it wasn't till later when I was going through a very stressful point in my life and decided to get off of those pills that I realized I wasn't having my period anymore. And because I didn't know where my body was at that point, being the birth control pills off and you don't know. So anyways, that wasn't like till my 50s. So it's right in alignment with these numbers and this timing. And then that's when I realized I was in menopause. So everybody's story is a little different. Some women experience some of this in their 30s, which is surprising to hear.
So when she's putting you on the birth control pill, that's regulating like your estrogen.
I was having like hair loss and stuff too. That's why I went to her, along with some of the weight gain and some brain fog and things, not even really thinking that it was part of my transition. I just didn't understand. I just thought maybe it's just getting older or maybe there's something else going on. I wasn't sure. But obviously the hair loss, I was like, what's happening? So she just put me on the birth control, thinking the whole thought was it would stabilize my hormones, just stabilize things so that my body could regulate again.
And did that help? Does that work?
It did help. It's hard to remember back, but I would say that like my emotions just evened out and my hair stopped falling out. But weight wise, I think I pretty much stayed the same, but I started changing what I was doing workouts wise.
Okay. Yeah.
And then a little bit after that was when I started learning more and
getting more information.
Yeah. And realizing that I was on the heels of menopause.
So what is happening hormonally in your body with these hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone?
Let's talk about perimenopause first here. So estrogen begins fluctuating with erratic spikes and dips, but progesterone starts declining first. So then we're looking at FSH, which is the follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, which is luteinizing hormone. Those are released by the pituitary gland, and they begin fluctuating as the ovaries start producing less estrogen and progesterone.
Okay, I got to slow down a little bit. So this FSH, this fish, FSH, and these other things, are those other hormones?
They are hormones that are sent out to stimulate the ovaries to release the estrogen and the progesterone. So
they're like little messages.
So FSH is directly to the estrogen, and it stimulates the ovaries to release the estrogen into our bodies, telling it what's needed. The pituitary gland is like overseeing that.
Okay.
But as the ovaries start producing less estrogen and progesterone, the FSH it keeps putting out, right? So the the pituitary gland keeps saying, oh, we need more. So the body keeps putting it out to stimulate the estrogen, but the ovaries are like backing off, right? They're starting to produce less. So at that time too, testosterone starts a slow decline, and the entire cycle and rhythm is just erratic and unpredictable during perimenopause. Then in menopause, we see FSH and LH continues to be released, like I was saying, by the pituitary gland, and they're trying to get a response from the ovaries, but the ovaries are leaving the party. They are going to sleep and they're just not up to it anymore. So we see this FSH and LH, they keep rising, which actually for FSH, 30 plus or more on blood markers, they look at that as an indicator that you're in menopause or going into menopause. And so if we're talking about estrogen or estradiol, continues to decrease to very low levels as the ovaries stop working. But then the adrenal glands still make some, they make a small amount, but it's not enough for us. And then the progesterone levels decrease to very low to nothing at all. And then testosterone continues its slow decline.
So you're talking about perimenopause being a progression of these hormones changing. So in the beginning, did you say your progesterone's dropping and then your estrogen is kind of going up and down?
So the progesterone, starts to drop first, and then the estrogen is fluctuating in perimenopause. But then in menopause, the ovaries basically stop producing, or they're producing very little at this time. And then the FSH keeps rising because the FSH is trying to stimulate those ovaries to release, and they're not.
So how does this convert in like real life? So this is the sciencey stuff that's going under the surface, that these hormones are fluctuating and changing progressively over time to eventually your period stops. But then what are some of the things when women aren't feeling themselves or feeling like things in their body are off, like you reaching out to your doctor in your 40s, not knowing it was perimenopause? Why do so many women not feel like themselves emotionally, mentally, or physically as these changes are happening?
We see symptoms, ones that people are more familiar with, are things like hot flashes, night sweats, sleep loss, weight gain, can see dry skin, vaginal dryness, there's mood swings, thinning hair like I was experiencing, as well as increased risk of bone degeneration or osteoporosis and heart disease. But then there's more atypical ones that people are not familiar with, but they're still very disruptive. They're maybe even more disruptive because a lot of times we don't know where thhere coming from. And that is where we're talking about, where you're saying they're feeling off. So those are things like depression, anxiety, lower stress tolerance, low self-esteem, lack of motivation, or you can have a loss of libido or low sex drive. There's painful sex. You can have fatigue, lack of focus. There's memory changes. You have joint and muscle pain. That I experienced that. I was having joint muscle pain that I was like, I can't figure out what's going on. There's also achy or painful joints. There's actually a symptom called frozen shoulder that women get that's extremely painful. Then there's dizziness. There's digestive issues, ringing in the ears. You can even see having a burning tongue or a roof of the mouth. So these symptoms will often bring women in to see their doctor, but then they get prescribed like antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications, things that's not necessarily addressing the issue, and it can cause even more problems. So they go to the doctor, they're looking for answers, they feel frustrated, they leave because they're given medications that aren't necessarily addressing their issue. Like for me, I was put on birth control, which addressing my hormones, but that wasn't really a good answer, right? I felt silly because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not 20. I'm not like trying to get pregnant here or trying to not get pregnant. It was just, I need help in a different way. But you can also see trips to the chiropractor even become frustrating because your adjustment doesn't seem to stay. It doesn't, because that's not necessarily the problem. I want to address something else too, though, because I think a lot of times women need to hear this one, is that strained relationships. So they can have a strained relationship with their husband at this time from symptoms like having mood shifts and intensified feelings of anger and depression, or changes in the libido and sex drive, like I talked about. And they can lead to a sense of disconnectedness, which is what we're talking about here. And there are some studies that even report an increase in divorce rates during menopause. And there's a term called gray divorce. It's a rising divorce rate amongst couples aged 50 and older, which correlates right there with the menopausal years for women. And then another place that women can find challenges and that make them feel like not themselves, they start to have difficulty in their careers. They can feel more challenged and with burdensome symptoms like the brain fog and lack of focus, and even motivation and low self-esteem that did not plague them before. And some studies even show that 1 in 10 women will quit their jobs due to symptoms of menopause. That's terrible. They have this career and they could potentially be at the height of their career, and they start to not be able to focus and do the job the way they used to do. And it becomes frustrating. So I think all these physical, mental, and emotional changes make us just feel different. And the truth is there is a change of life taking place, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. So I think with the right mindset, this time of life can be the best years of your life. It's an opportunity for a reset in so many cases. So thinking of it as a time of opportunity to foster your passions and embrace personal growth and discover a new purpose.
Yeah, I like that perspective. I mean, that sounds exciting and and hopeful. It's easy to just get in that not feeling like yourself. Your body's changing, you're getting older, a sense of loss, how it's affecting you emotionally. Your brain's not working quite the same. So what I hear you saying is offering a message of hope that this
Yes.
doesn't have to be a terrible time. How do we turn that around? What are our options here?
One thing is once they get through menopause, whether that's looking at something like HRT or just doing it naturally, once you get beyond the transition, your hormone dips will start to regulate and the fluctuations and the dips can start to balance out and women can find that they become more emotionally steady, which can
And is that in menopause? So we're talking about the emotional steadiness. What is the most unstable time? Is it the perimenopause or is it the menopause? Does it get better once you actually go into menopause?
in a lot of ways, I think women are maybe more frustrated in perimenopause because there's not like a real answer in terms of, yeah, they could say, oh, you're in perimenopause, but it's such a fluctuation, right? There's so
Yeah.
many ups and downs and dips and spikes, and it's really erratic. So it may feel more confusing because you're not sure how to support yourself. What's the best way to support myself through this? But I think there are answers. So menopause, the blood work, they can look and see like your FSH levels are going up and you have these physical symptoms. So if your physical symptoms are showing your periods are super erratic, or maybe your period has stopped and or maybe you get like a period and then you go months and then you have a period. So that's like waning into menopause. But once the period has stopped and you don't see it anymore and it's been a year, then you know for sure you're in menopause. That's medically how they look at it.
You mentioned HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. Can you like tell us what that is in simple terms and how it might help some women?
Hormone replacement therapy is taking an external form of hormones to replace what your body is no longer making on its own in sufficient quantities. This includes estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So it can be taken in various means. So we see orally, it's offered in pills, troches, which are lozenges you can dissolve under your tongue, or you can take it transdermally with patches, gels, or sprays. There's also vaginal options like creams, suppositories, as well as vaginal rings. There's also injections out there, but I don't hear about them very often, but you do come across that in the information. There's also pellets, which those we know are very popular right now. A lot of clinics are offering that. Now, a pellet is placed under your skin and it dissolves over time. Those are my least favorite because you cannot remove the pellet. So if the dose is not working for you or you have a bad reaction, you have to just ride it out for 3 months or more and take it out. So that's my least favorite one out of all of the options.
You're talking about different avenues to get the hormone, the different vehicles to administer it. Okay. And then there's also the traditional HRT, and then there's bioidentical. Can you explain the difference between those two things?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So the traditional HRT, those hormones became very popular in the 1970s. So those are synthetic hormones that are derived from animal sources. One example is Premarin, and Premarin is a synthetic estrogen, and it consists of more than 50 different estrogens made from the urine of pregnant horses. So an example of a synthetic progestin is another one called Prempro. Both of these hormones are chemically structured in a way that is different to the hormones of our own bodies. And they often come in a standardized dose, meaning the dosing cannot be individualized to each woman's needs. But looking at bioidentical hormones, so these are sourced from plants such as soy or yams. They are also synthetic, which a lot of people don't realize, but they are synthetic in the fact that they are made in a lab. But their molecular structure is identical to the hormones of our own bodies. So they are identical to the hormones that our body makes. And so our body recognizes them in the same manner, and they're processed in our bodies in the same way that our natural hormones are. So studies have shown that bioidentical hormones have fewer side effects, and the bioidentical hormones can be individually tailored to each woman's needs, unlike the traditional hormone therapy, the older
Okay.
traditional hormone therapy. So those are the
Okay.
biggest differences.
Okay. At one point, I know hormone replacement therapy was all the rage. People were getting on it and experiencing some alleviation of some of their symptoms. And then it was avoided like the plague. And now it seems to be making a comeback. What happened and what should women know?
Hey, I wanted to interrupt this podcast for a minute. If you've been listening and thinking, this is exactly what I need, but I don't know how to actually do this in my life, I created something for you. It's called Clarity and Courage, and it's my monthly coaching membership for Christian women who are ready to stop spinning and start moving forward. You get a mix of self-study and 2 optional coaching calls each month. So you've got structure to stay focused and support to know you're not doing it alone. And right now you can get it for less than $2 a day. You'll find the link to sign up at myhappyvault.com or thehappiestlives.com. All right, back to the episode.
Okay, we're talking about the Women's Health Initiative here. So the WHI is what it's oftentimes referred to as, was a massive 3-part study with over 160,000 women ages 50 to 79.
Do you know what year this was?
The early 90s.
Okay.
And it was sponsored by the National Institute of Health, or the NIH. So the goal of the study was to improve health and reduce chronic disease in postmenopausal women. One component of the study focused on hormone therapy. So the aim of this study was to see if hormone therapy could prevent the most common causes of death and disability in postmenopausal women. And that was looking at things like cardiovascular disease, cancer, and osteoporosis. The clinical study had 2 arms. So one used women with an intact uterus who were given either a placebo or a combination of estrogen and progestin. They used Prempro. And the other arm used women without a uterus who were given estrogen alone. Premarin is what they used. So both arms of the study were discontinued early on when the preliminary results appeared to show an increased incidence of coronary heart disease and breast cancer in the first arm, and a small increase in blood clots in the second arm. So that sounds like they made the right decision. However, because it was stopped very abruptly, the sudden stop of the trial attracted enormous media attention, which caused this cascading widespread panic amongst women and their doctors. And it was at that time that a high percentage, more than 80% of women on hormone therapy abruptly stopped their treatment. And many doctors also at that time refused to prescribe hormone therapy anymore to menopausal women. And looking now, more recently, there have been clarifications from researchers that actually continue to do the research. Now they're offering these insights that are debunking the initial results of the WHI. That's why we're seeing this shift right now, because that information has been coming out for a little while. So there were flaws to the study, and they included things like the subjects studied, the interventions used, and the design parameters. Let me break those down a little bit.
Okay.
So the participants, there were 160,000 women aged 59 to 79, making the average age about 63, which put these women more than 10 years into menopause or 10 years past their last menstrual cycle, meaning their risks for age-related diseases like cardiovascular disease were higher when they started the study. So remember, the average age in the US for menopausal women is around 51. So that makes these participants that were used a poor representation of the women that it was actually aimed for. The other problem with the participants was they were not pre-screened for diseases like cancer, heart disease, and osteoporosis to begin with. So we don't know if these diseases already existed before they started the trial, right? So not necessarily being from the hormone therapy. So the interventions, they used only one type of hormone therapy, which were the synthetic hormones or the traditional hormone therapy we were talking about. So they went with a one-size-fits-all approach. Premarin was the estradiol, and Provera was the progesterone. So both were taken orally. No bioidentical forms were used and no other routes of administration were used. They just used the oral form. So Premarin, which is the estradiol, that's derived from the horse urine of the pregnant horses. This form of estradiol is not bioidentical to hormone estradiol, and so our bodies don't recognize it in the same way. And in fact, because it's made from the urine, it's like a byproduct of the hormones that have already passed through the horse's liver. So it's mostly made up of another estrogen called estrone, which creates an imbalance in our bodies. And it can cause things like higher risks of blood clotting and increased risk of uncontrolled growth of bodily tissues, or AKA cancer. So the quality of what they used wasn't ideal.
So
And then,
what people are taking these days is different than
yes, than what they used in that study. Yes.
Okay.
The other issue with Premarin was that it was taken orally. Oral estrogen can increase the production of clotting factors that can lead to higher incidence of stroke because it has to go through the digestive system. So it changes it. That's why now we see things like the gels, the patches, the doing transdermal and having options. And then this is very interesting. As for the design parameters, the data was actually misconstrued by the WHI because they made broad risk claims, making the data seem more significant than it actually was. Where overall, the risks were small in what they call absolute terms, meaning that the figures were considered independently, not in comparison to anything else. So actually the real results showed that younger women ages 50 to 59 did not show the same level of risk, because remember the average age was 63 in the study.
Yeah.
And the data actually showed that women in their 50s had a 30% decrease in all-cause mortality, but that data wasn't reported on at all.
Okay.
They just reported the scary stuff, the media took it and blew it up, and then it became this big thing. So now, 20 years later, after reanalysis of the WHI, a lot of those original conclusions have been walked back. So now we see they're saying that estrogen actually decreases the risk of breast cancer, the risk of death from it, and the risk of death from all causes. And investigators have now admitted that hormone therapy is the most effective treatment for managing menopausal hot flashes and improves women's quality of life. And when hormone replacement is started within 10 years of your final menstrual period, it can decrease the risk of cardiac events, strokes, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality. So
a lot of benefits to doing it.
Yeah. And despite all that, we're still dealing with things like faulty labels that are on estrogen, warning labels for cancer. And then doctors are still unwilling to prescribe.
Yeah. But I do find it seems like a lot of doctors are uninformed about some of the new research, the newer research that's out on that.
Yeah, because I don't think that they're being taught that in school yet. It takes time for information to actually undo what was done. And so that new information is coming out. And I think that conventional medicine is starting to catch up, but that's why a lot of women are starting to seek other answers in other places, because they're hearing some of this, but then their doctor is discouraging them depending on who they're seeing. So we're starting to see some shifts. There's a lot of people working on it out there.
Yeah.
And having conversations like this today was helpful.
And did you find when you went on the hormone replacement therapy, you were talking about some muscle aches, body pains that you were having? Did it help alleviate some of that?
It did. I had a lot going on in my hips and my lower back. I did have some shoulder pain, but I don't know if it was actually like frozen shoulder or not. So I had additional things that I had never experienced. A lot was in my hip flexors because we have estrogen receptors all throughout our body. And those like tendons and muscles and joint, all the ligaments and everything, they start to tighten up. And so I was having a lot of tightness in my hip flexors, and it was just causing a lot of lower back pain and those kinds of issues. But I also noticed that anywhere I had old injuries, there was a lot of inflammation. It's like my body just couldn't handle it anymore. And then when I started taking the hormone replacement therapy, it took so very small doses will actually change the night sweats and some of the more familiar symptoms of menopause. A very low dose will take care of those. But then it took a little bit of a higher dose to get me feeling better and starting to notice those pains and aches and joint things go away.
So just increasing the dose a little bit to figure out exactly how much it was that you needed.
Yes.
So besides hormone replacement therapy, that's one tool. Why is that not the only answer?
So every woman experiences menopause differently. So HRT can be life-changing for some, yet it's not a universal answer. Like the WHI, you think of that, they tried to do a one size fits all, and it's just not. We have a lot of other options now, which are amazing. So some women can't tolerate it, or they don't want it. Maybe they still have fears of it. For whatever reason, they just don't want it. Others may have contraindications to using HRT, although there aren't that many contraindications. Some of them are like liver disease, advanced coronary heart disease, active blood clotting conditions, or a history of them. So it's best actually to be viewed as one tool in the toolbox and not the absolute answer. And it definitely isn't a magic pill. But I want to put this out there because I think it's more important that at this stage of life for women to address any unhealthy lifestyle habits in general to optimize their health, longevity, and their experience in menopause and beyond. So this is true for someone starting HRT or one who decides against it, because HRT is not going to fix things like blood sugar instability or metabolic dysfunction, poor gut health, inflammatory diets, sedentary lifestyle, or poor circadian or sleep habits. And it's not going to help you if you're living an overworked, like high stress lifestyle. So those are things that really need to be addressed no matter where.
So these are some of the root cause things that you'd like to talk about. Yes, changes are happening with your hormones, but there may be other factors in play that are making that hormone shift worse, or adding other contributing variables? Or how would you say that when we're talking about getting to the root of what's going on and how you help women support their bodies naturally?
Yeah, looking at it, so me as a nurse, I can't prescribe HRT. I come at it from the more supportive angle. So some of the ways that I can actually help a woman either looking into HRT or not, but if we're talking about HRT, those interested in it, not sure where to begin, I can actually help them find an appropriate provider in their area. Sometimes that's challenging because there is definitely a better way to support women who want to be on HRT with timing, checking their labs, making sure they're coming back. Some places just want to put women on it and they send them out on their way. So there is a better provider, and sometimes it's a little elusive trying to find them. And I have some tools that I can use to help them find a practitioner in their area. I can also direct them in questions to ask and teach them how to advocate for themselves so they can enter an appointment with the doctor or a nurse practitioner feeling prepared. Sometimes just going in and not knowing anything, you feel at the mercy and you're just doing whatever they tell you to do. It reminds me of when I went in to my doctor and she just put me on a pill and asked me questions. I'm like, okay, I'll just take it, because I didn't know that there were any other options at that time. So really the doctor should be somebody that is offering you all the options as informed consent. They're supposed to be doing that. So for someone on HRT, I can help them in a similar way too. For instance, let's say they're not satisfied with how their HRT is working. I can actually help them maybe flush out the possible dosing issues. I can't change their dose or anything, but I can help them understand other options or how to approach their doctor to get their needs met. And then as for all women in this stage of life, or any stage of life really, but if we're looking at menopause, I can support them in their lifestyle habits to learn what they can improve for a healthier, more vibrant season of life in menopause as well as beyond. So we want to remember that whether you're looking to start HRT, going through menopause naturally, or already on HRT, the foundations to our health need to be tended to. This season of a woman's life requires some shifts in lifestyle, perspective, as well as maybe even spiritual habits. So I like to view it as a second chance to be the best that we can be now and stepping into the future.
That's so good. Even though you can't prescribe the hormone replacement therapy, I do think that's helpful having a knowledgeable person in your corner who can make observations and speak to some of the things you're experiencing. Because especially with the medical system these days, doctors get a short amount of time with you. I went down that road of exploring that option of hormone replacement therapy. And I consulted with you about that because I know I had an appointment and then she told me to come in, I think in 3 months, but she couldn't get me in for 5 months or something crazy like that. And so then you're experiencing stuff in your body. And I don't know if this feels right, trying to pay attention to what are changes since you've been taking the hormones. And especially if you're taking a couple different hormones at one time, it's hard to sort through all that. And you may not be getting the support from your doctor. Ideally, you're going to find a doctor, and that's something that you said that you can help do. But obviously, you don't meet all the doctors in the community, so you can help direct how the person can find that. But that was helpful for me too, to process with you some of the symptoms I was experiencing and what might be some possible things going on.
Yeah.
So I know that is part of what you do, but going back to this lifestyle and root cause support, what are some of the key areas that you focus on when you're helping women in this season, besides the hormone replacement therapy?
I call it the foundations to health. They're the pillars that help us live a vibrant life. I like to look at the whole person and pick apart places that need improvement, or focusing on things like nutrition and digestion, your metabolic health, which is really important, exercise and movement, stress management, as well as looking at like mental and spiritual health. We also will look at like your circadian rhythms. I really love looking at that, and sleep hygiene is so important. Sleep can be challenging in menopause, perimenopause leading up to, and as well as menopause. So looking at some things that we can do to support that. And like hydration, something as simple as hydration too is another area. Looking at the foundational pillars that sustain us. A lot of times this time of life too, women are coming into it, maybe the children just left and you're home now and not sure what to do. And you start to see all these things in yourself where before maybe you were more distracted with doing all of the things you needed to do for the kids there. And so a lot of these foundations have slipped. Maybe there's some things that it's helpful to look at, to peel back the curtain and see what's going on back there. And sometimes they're really easy fixes and simple things can be adjusted.
Yeah. And I think understanding why those things are important rather than someone saying, drink more water or get enough sleep. I think that's something you're really good at, is just helping educate a person of why gut health, how all of that affects everything, how it affects your hormone health, why we want to do these things, the inner relationship between all the parts. So I'm good at helping people with the inner relationship between your thoughts, your feelings, the way you show up in the world. And I think in that same way, you can see the relationship between all of the systems. When one system is not healthy, it's going to affect the other systems. And I think that can be very helpful, not just saying drink more water, get more sleep, but here's why you want to do that. And I know you have a hierarchy or an order, a way that you move through in helping people really stabilize their health. And I believe that starts with the gut. Is that right?
It's a top down, north to south type of thing.
Okay.
So when you're looking at digestion, let's just look at digestion. If you want to look at that from the top to bottom aspect, that one's very apparent. So your digestion actually starts with your mind, because you are thinking about eating. When you think about eating, that's when digestion starts. So it triggers, activates enzymes and things in your body and prepares your body for food. That's why one of the things I do teach is making sure you sit down, you look at your food. What are you choosing as your food, right? That's a huge important aspect of it. So it starts there mentally. But then when you sit down, taking the time to sit down and have gratitude over your meal, called being in a state of receiving. And when we're in that state, we digest things properly because we're relaxed, we're in the right frame of mind. And that frame of mind, it's the gut-brain connection. It all comes together. So that makes sense of starting north to south. Then we get just the physical eating, right? It starts in your mouth, down into your stomach, and then it goes beyond there into your the rest of your digestion. And we see a whole pathway there. So if you're not starting from above, and let's say you're eating poorly, that's one major thing there. Let's say you're eating on the go all the time. You're not taking that time to sit down and be relaxed. That's going to affect your digestion. So simple things like that. Before you even get into what's happening in my gut, what's happening in my intestines, like, or what's happening with my liver and my bile and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a hierarchy that you want to look at. And yeah.
And then talking about the digestion, can that tie in to your hormones?
Yes, definitely. There is a big link between digestion and having things in order and how it affects your hormone balance. And yes, there's a lot.
Food choice too. As you're saying, digestion begins with the types of food you're eating and then thinking about eating, how it's all related, but certain foods can disrupt your hormones as well, right?
So let's talk about that for a second. A poor diet that causes blood sugar dysregulation. So looking at your habits, like a diet full of processed carbs and sugars, or a high carb, low fat, low protein diet, or things like drinking too much caffeine or too much alcohol, even skipping meals or eating less to keep the weight off can worsen your symptoms. Those kinds of habits will impact things like hot flashes, mood swings, fatigue, anxiety, and cause more sleep disruptions. And that's because your blood sugar spikes and dips stress the adrenal system and worsen hormonal fluctuations. So you want to keep that adrenal system in good, running well. And looking at things like if you're eating less, because a lot of times women are maybe gaining weight in menopause. And so they have these different ways of addressing the weight because it's something new for them. Maybe it hasn't been a problem before. So eating less, skipping meals, and not eating enough protein and fat can also cause things like muscle loss, which in menopause, it's imperative for us to keep muscle because it's just going to carry us through for the rest of our life, right? To have muscle tone, and you don't want to be weak there. And then muscles are built by protein. So if you're not eating enough protein, you're not giving your body what it needs in order to make those muscles.
Okay. So what other habits or hidden stressors can make your symptoms worse?
So we can look at poor sleep hygiene, what they call sleep hygiene, or circadian rhythm imbalance, not caring for your circadian rhythm in the right manner. So habits like blue screens at night and lights, having blue lights on before bed, inconsistent sleep schedules, eating or snacking too late, or drinking alcohol at night. All of this will increase things like hot flashes, brain fog, cause more irritability, create cravings, and cause a cortisol imbalance. So menopausal women are already prone to sleep disturbances, and poor sleep compounds all of our symptoms. So practicing good sleep hygiene is critical. It's actually great stewardship of our body and our mind and soul as well. So then there's also over-exercising. This one, a lot of women might not realize. This is one that's overlooked. So over-exercising, chronic cardio, or HIIT classes, which are high-intensity interval training. A good example would be Orange Theory, which a lot of people are not going to want to hear.
What is that? What's Orange Theory?
Orange Theory is, I don't know if you guys have it there, but it's a gym where you go in and it's high interval training, but you do it as a group. So it's a group led. And the orange part is that you have on a monitor and there's screens up. So it shows what range you're getting into. And they want you in this certain cardio range. And it's orange. That section is orange.
Okay.
But it's high intensity
type
of training. So weight gain in menopause can cause women to start this frantic push on exercise where they start thinking more is more type of attitude. And it leads women to these kinds of intense daily workouts. So they're thinking like the more I burn, I'll lose or keep the weight off. Or some women might actually already have this type of workout routine in their life from their younger years, and they're finding that it's not really working anymore. Something's changed. So these kinds of workouts actually have the opposite effect than what's desired because they elevate cortisol and they can increase inflammation and disrupt recovery. Overall, this approach can worsen belly fat, fatigue, and mood. And menopause is really a good time to assess and adjust your workouts to meet the needs of your body in midlife and beyond. So I think it's just that time to really look. And I'll get into it a little later of what we should be doing for exercise. But there's also high levels of unaddressed stress or trauma or unprocessed emotional stress in their lives. This time of life and for women is called the sandwich generation, which is that you still have young children or maybe teenagers at home, but you're also caring for aging parents. So there can be a lot of stress there. And it can also be due to unresolved grief or past trauma in your life or relationship tensions or loss of identity. Because sometimes when the children leave and they have gone on their way, women are, who am I now? I'm not taking care of these children at home anymore. What's my purpose? So this stress can cause to dysfunction in our nervous system, which is a key player in hormonal regulation. Stress causes cortisol levels to elevate, like I mentioned before. And when that happens, it suppresses progesterone, and that can worsen anxiety and increase hot flashes, weight gain, and disrupted sleep again. And then actually one more is toxic self-talk or perfectionism. I have struggled with some of this, and I'm sure a lot of the women that you see this with thought patterns, I should be doing more, or I'm falling apart. Those kinds of thoughts can trigger feelings of shame, anxiety, hypervigilance, and fear. And it also causes an unbalanced nervous system, keeping us in a state of fight or flight. And this in turn exacerbates all the symptoms. So taking intentional time to work on our thought life or taking our thoughts captive it's hard work.
Yeah.
I definitely will attest to that. It's hard work, but it's so worth addressing at this time in your life.
So what's harder, lifting weights or reframing your thoughts?
Reframing your thoughts, hands down. But I think it's so detrimental to your overall health and longevity at this time in your life. So it's that time to reset. And I think it's a perfect time to learn techniques that you offer in the Happiest Lives Academy or Clarity and Courage. I did it. I probably need to do it again. It's an ongoing journey, right? It's not just an end time, but
that's why I like looking at the whole of all of this, because that's what I spend most of my podcast talking about. But yet there can be physiological things going on, and you can beat yourself up because you just feel like your thoughts aren't enough to overcome that. So I think being able to have some compassion and just seeing ourselves as whole people, that God has given us a body and he's given us a mind and he's put his spirit in us, that there's a relationship between all the parts. And it's easy to get just stuck in one school of thought. But I think that's why we need the whole body. Like God has brought you. God, he's given you a heart for looking at some of these underlying physical things and lifestyle choices and how all this can impact you physically. Whereas I'm going to focus on more of the mental piece of it, of learning how to feel your feelings and what you're thinking about your feelings and what you're thinking about your circumstance. But it all fits together. We need everyone in the body.
Yes, for sure. But I need more of that, I think, to help women with the mental aspect. I see such a need for a collaboration, really, because I might not have all of the aspects of the mental health and how to help. And being able to see where my information and my help starts and stops, right? And being able to, I think that we need more collaboration in these fields right now, especially for women going through this. It used to be so much more silent. You didn't hear so much about women's struggles in menopause. It was just like, oh, it's their time of life and they're just going to be like that and put them on antidepressants and it'll be good. And I think women are just a little bit more complicated. And so it's been shoved under the rug and people haven't had to deal with it. But it's all coming like to the surface now. Women are starting to speak out more and want more. And as they learn a little bit more about, wow, okay, this is what my body's doing and what my body needs, they start to ask for more. So it does take all of us as a village stepping up.
Yeah. No, it's so good. What does it look like to work with you? Let everyone know what kind of support you offer.
Okay. So I offer one-on-one support as well as group classes. So for one-on-one, I usually start with a discovery call where we can get to know each other a little and find out what you are looking to get out of working with me. That discovery call helps us to understand if we are a good fit. And then if we decide to proceed, I prefer working with a client for 3 months to start. This really gives the opportunity to peel away the layers of the onion to find what the root causes are that can be addressed. And then when I'm doing that, I use various tools with my clients to gather information, create protocols, and teach. And it includes intake paperwork, questionnaires, blood work, and other tests like a hair tissue mineral analysis is something that I do, amongst some other things. And then for group classes, I am certified as a Genesis prescription instructor from the School of Christian Health and Nutrition. So the Genesis prescription is an 8-week course that delivers the foundations to living in a state of health from a biblical perspective. And the course is informative, it's insightful, and it will give you a new perspective on how our Creator made this wonderful world with provisions for us as his children. I teach this a few times a year, and the next course will be held soon. So you can reach out if you're interested.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I know we've had a lot of our gals in the Happiest Lives VIP group. They've also gone through your Genesis prescription program, and I've heard good things about that. So that's great.
Yeah.
Now, I know one of the things I love about you is that you're not just focused on the physical, you're also focused on the spiritual. Your faith shapes the way that you help women heal. Can you tell us a little bit more about your views on all of that?
My faith is my strength and my pillar, and it drives my work. And I feel called to do this work. So I turn to the Holy Spirit asking for guidance with every client, and I strive to ask him and hear him.
Mm.
So one of the things I do is I pray with my clients at the beginning of a session to invite God into the process of healing. And I also like to bring scripture into the healing journey because I think God's word is powerful. And I also pray for my clients when we're not together. I have to try and stay connected as much as possible to the root of our Creator.
That's probably important to a lot of our listeners out there too, whose faith is important to them as well. So for the woman who's out there listening today and she's thinking that she relates to a lot of these things, but she doesn't know where to begin, do you have a few small, powerful steps she could begin right now?
All right. So the 3 tips that I'm going to go for here: stabilize sugars, your blood sugars, prioritize sleep, and take a look at your daily movement, making sure that it's hormone supportive. So what does that all mean? Let's go back to stabilize your blood sugars. So you want to make protein first. We need protein. 90 grams per day is a good target. And you also want to stick to whole food carbs. Think fruits and vegetables. So the best way to get God's rainbow of colors into your diet is fruits and vegetables. So when you're looking at your plate, another technique you can do is eat your protein first. The protein is satiating, and you will then in turn eat less carbs. This will help stabilize your blood sugars. Another big thing I'm going to throw out there that I don't know how many women are still doing this. It was very popular when we were younger, but stop eating low-fat foods. So your brain and body need healthy fat. Low-fat foods are not, there's just not a lot of nutrition in them. They cause a lot of problems. So just cut that out. So the next thing is prioritize sleep. So what does your current sleep routine look like? You want to have a consistent nightly bedtime. So we want to consider that with your bedtime, you want to take into consideration that the hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. are our body's most restful time of sleep. We get the best healing and recovery sleep at that time. So if you're going to bed at 11, you're already missing an hour of that very important sleep time. So really you want to try and hit 10 p.m. for your latest going to bed. I like to look at a 9:30, maybe getting into bed to read or doing something like that before you shut it down or pray or something. So you also want to support your circadian rhythm. What does that mean? The sun is the biggest driver of our circadian rhythm. You want to step outside and expose yourself to the sunrise as well as the sunset. Those 2 sun times are really big at driving your sleep and wake cycle. So that's what a circadian rhythm is, a sleep-wake cycle. Stepping outside for 1 to 3 minutes to start is good. Sunrise and sunset. And watch your blue light screens 2 hours before bed. And having a dark and cold room is best, especially if you're experiencing night sweats and things like that. You can try and make the temperature of the room cooler, or you can look at cooling sheets, something like that. Those are some easy tips there. And then looking at daily movement that is hormone supportive, you want to start focusing more on weight training. So we really need to build the muscle. The muscle is going to be supportive. So weight training 2 to 3 times per week. If you're not familiar with that, I suggest finding a trainer and learning some basics. There's also a lot of things online that you can look at, but a trainer will help you with your form and things that will be important. Start including walks into your days, like 20 to 30 minutes, or walking is great. It's just you need to have the weights too, because the walking is not going to build muscle. It's more balancing and stress supportive. And then stretching should also be included, and that's supportive of the nervous system. So those are the 3 things, but I'm going to throw one more in there that I think is really important.
These are like 3 things with 5 points about them.
I know.
It's good. I like that they're all very practical. And so
Yes.
I think everyone listening, she's giving you lots of choices here. Start with one of those things and you got lots of options. So I like that.
Yes. But the other thing is daily time with the Lord. I think it's so
good.
We need to address the spirit. So get in the word. You can, things like the Bible app will help you if you haven't been in your Bible in a while and you don't know where to start, or maybe you've never read the Bible and you're not sure like how to read the Bible. Try the Bible app. It's super helpful and you'll start getting in the word that way. Or choosing like a specific book to read, or you could even decide you want to read the Bible from beginning to end, just something, whatever it is, just getting in the word, I think is so important.
Is there any other parting words that you want to give to women about this season of their life?
Yeah, I think we touched on it, but gosh, menopause is not the end. Instead, our perspective should be one of opportunity. It's a transitional time that can be filled with the possibility of a more meaningful and vibrant life. I think just taking that position, because a lot of times we think it's the end. It's so easy to feel like it's the end. We're not able to produce children anymore. What's our purpose? No, there's so much more. And
just beginning.
And the fact that we are living so much longer, we need to steward our bodies. We're called to steward our bodies. God gave us these bodies as a gift, and we need to care for them in that manner. It's a big responsibility, and we need to see it that way. And so the more you care for yourself, the longer this body is going to take you through the rest of life.
Yeah. So good. So where can listeners find you if they want to work with you one-on-one, or they're interested in maybe doing the Genesis prescription group with you?
They can find me on Instagram. That's one place. Instagram page is Dawning Christian Health. It's all one word. And under my profile.
So Dawn, D-A-W-N, Dawning Christian Health on Instagram.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
And then you can, under my profile in Instagram, you go down and there's a tap link. So you can go to that tap link and you will see my services, my bio, and more. Or you can email me at dawningchristianhealth@gmail.com and mention that you heard me on the podcast, and we can book a free 15-minute discovery call.
Perfect. That's great. It has been so fun chatting with you and getting to share this information with the women out there. I think they'll find that very helpful. So thank you for joining us today. If you need some extra support, know that there's someone else in your corner to help you navigate all of this. You guys do not have to do this alone. There are other people that God has gifted and led in the direction to increase their span of knowledge that can walk alongside with you. And Dawn is certainly one of those people. So next week on the podcast, we are going to be talking about desire and drive. This is our second to last in this series. This has been a long series, 9 parts. That is going to be our 8th part on desire and drive, which is an important part of our happiness, of how our body and our mind and our spirit all work together. So I hope you guys come back and join me then. I'll talk to you later.
I'm so glad you joined me today. If you'd like to know more about me and how we can work together, just head to thehappiestlives.com. I work with individuals, couples, and groups of Christian women who are ready to grow, heal, and live with more clarity and joy. While you're there, you'll find resources you can get free, like my podcast guide, the mini course, The 4 Things You Must Do to Become the Happiest Wife, and a link to join my monthly newsletter so we can stay in touch. Again, that's thehappiestlives.com. I'd love to connect with you there.